Alright, here we are on section 9.5. We're moving forward into section 9. This one is more of the same as far as having to solve or square radical expressions, but now we're going to actually use that skill to solve radical equations. Again, steps are listed here just like they were in 9.3. These are the steps. You need to go by those. The first step is to isolate the radical term. Well, what is the radical term? This is the radical term here. That's the radical term there. This is the radical term here, not including the 8. So that's the term that we have to get by itself on the left side of the equal sign. That's what it means by isolate the radical term. Then square or cube or whatever, just like we do reciprocal power to solve for, to get that x to be just x to the first, and then solve for x. And of course the last one is important. Just like I said before, you have to check for extraneous solutions, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to put some answers there that are not correct. So in step 1, the radical term is isolated, so all we have to do is, that's square root, so we're going to square it. And we have to square both sides. Again, remember, you have to do it to both sides. So, squaring a square root just lifts the radical. You have 7x minus 18 equals 25. 5 squared is 25. Then we solve like we've been doing for years. We add 18 to both sides. That becomes 0, so you have 7x equals 43. And then when you divide by 7, x is 43 sevenths. Okay, so now we check. You have square root of 7 times 43 sevenths minus 18, and does that equal 5? This becomes just 43. So we have the square root of 43 minus 18 equals 5. 43 minus 18 is 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. So that was a good answer. X is equal to 43 sevenths. All right. We're good on that one. Number 2. We don't have our term isolated. We've got that extra 1, so we have to subtract 1 from both sides. And we have the square root of 3x minus 8 equals 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. Now you square both sides because you had a square root. You square both sides. The square of a square root just becomes what's underneath the radical. That equals 4. Add 8 across. So 3x now equals, when we add 8, 12, and divide by 3, x equals 4. Now let's check it. Again, you always need to check the square root of 3x, so that's 3 times 4, minus 8, plus 1 equals 3. And remember, the plus 1 is not under the square root. So we have 12 minus 8 is 4, plus 1 equals 3. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 1 does equal 3. And so x equals 4 is a good answer for that equation. Alright, so let's look at the last one. Again, 8 is not part of the radical, so we have to divide by 8 to get rid of that. 8 times something, you always do the opposite, so I divide. Now we're left with the cube root of x minus 24, and 0 divided by anything is still 0. Go backwards. I messed up on that, so let's go back and correct all of that. Because when I identified the radical, I have a little problem. this 24 is not under the radical, as you can see. So obviously I can make a mistake too. So we're going to add. So if those of you were wondering, you were right, I made a mistake. So we're going to add 24, if I can get my pen to work. To both sides. Okay, so that adds to be 0, and so we have 8 times the cube root of x equals 24. Now we divide by 8, because we still need to isolate that cube root of x, so we end up with the cube root of x equals 3. Now the radical is isolated. X to the 1/3, we're going to raise it to the reciprocal power, which is to cube it. 1/3 times 3 is 1, so that becomes x equals 27. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Now we need to check our answer. Always check your answer. So we have 8 times the cube root of 27 minus 24 equals 0. Cube root of 27 is 3. Okay, and so you have 24 minus 24 equals 0. And that does check out. That's a good answer. So we're going to move over here and say that x equals 27. So our first three worked out, fairly straightforward, not a problem. Let's go to our next three. Okay, here, let's go ahead and mark and see if I can get it right this time. There's our radical term. There's our radical term. And in number 6, there's our radical term. And I think I actually got it right this time. So let's go back. First thing we've got to do is subtract 7 here. That becomes 0. So you have 4 times the square root of x equals negative 4. Now you're going to divide by 4. So that becomes 1 times the square root of x. So now that square root of x is isolated. That equals negative 1. Now we have to square that square root. So that becomes x. And negative 1 squared is 1. Okay, so let's check. We have 7 plus 4 times the square root of 1 equals 3. Square root of 1 is 1. So 7 plus 4 times 1, or 7 plus 4, is 11. And that does not equal 3. So, since that one didn't work out for us, the answer there is no solution. Now, that's provided you do your math right. So, you have to be pretty confident that you've done your math correctly. But, you need to know that no solution is a possibility for an answer. All right, let's isolate this radical. We're going to do that by subtracting 5. Now this one's a little strange because if you notice right there, we have a variable on both sides of this equation. And that makes this problem a little bit more difficult. But let's see what that does for us. 5 minus 5 is 0 on the left. So we're left with the square root of x plus 7. And that equals x minus 5. Now we're going to square the square root, so we're left with x plus 7 equals, and x minus 5 squared, remember, if you can remember how to do that, it's a squared minus 2ab, which is going to be 10x plus b squared. Now I need to combine everything because now we have a quadratic. Since we have this x squared term right here, that's a quadratic. We're probably going to have two answers, 1, 2, or no answers. So I have to subtract x and subtract 7. And that ends up with 0 equals x squared minus 11x plus 18. Now we have to try to factor because that's how we solve quadratics, that or quadratic formula. And we have x minus, we need something that will multiply to be 18 and add to be 11, so that's 9 and 2. Now my solutions, though, are the values for x that make that. So x is equal to 9 or positive 2. Positive, remember, it's the value of x that we're looking for that would make those parentheses equal 0. So now we have to check both of those, 9 and 2. So we have 5 plus the square root of 9 plus 7 equals, if we use 9 for x in that one, we have to use 9 all the way. So we have 5 plus the square root of 16 equals 9. Square root of 16 is 4. And so that one checks out. 9 checks out. Now we have to try 2. 5 plus the square root of 2 plus 7 equals 2. 5 plus the square root of 9 equals 2. 7 and 2 is 9. And so then we have 5 plus 3 equals 2, which is not true. So we have to eliminate this answer choice here. That one didn't work. So we only have one answer choice that works, and that's x equals 9. So remember, it might eliminate one of them, both of them, or you might keep both of them. So x equals 9 is my final answer on that one. Now let's go and work our last problem here. Our last problem, again, isolate the radical, so I'm going to add x here to both sides. Again, we'll end up with a variable on both sides. We can't add that x because it's not under the radical. So we can't combine the x's, but so we have 3 times square root of x plus 1 equals x plus 1. Divide by, now, you might divide by 3, and you have to think, what's going to be easier, squaring this term or dividing by 3? Well, this x plus 1 is not going to divide by 3 very easily, but we can square this term pretty easily on the left. So that becomes 9 times x plus 1. So we're just going to square that. And when we square x plus 1, this binomial, that becomes x squared plus 2x plus 1. Now we have 9x plus 9, distributing that 9, equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. Subtract 9x and subtract 9. Okay, so all that becomes 0 over here. 0 equals x squared minus 7x minus 8. Okay. Now, can we factor that? That's the next question. It has to be factored or quadratic. X times x. This minus here tells me one sign is plus, one is minus. Okay. And I need factors that will multiply to be negative 8 and add to be negative 7, one of each. And so that's going to be 8 and negative 1. So what values of x then are we looking at? Again, the value of x that makes each of those parentheses 0. So that's going to be 8 and negative 1. I have to check both of them though, because we found out they may not both work. So let's go back here and do our solution. We have 3 times the square root of 8 plus 1 minus 8 equals 1. Okay. 8 plus 1 is 9. So we have 3 times the square root of 9 minus 8 equals 1. Square root of 9 is 3. So 9 minus 8 equals 1. That one checks out. Let's look at our next one. Okay, 3 times the square root of -1 plus 1 minus -1 equals 1. Well, -1 plus 1 is 0. 3 times 0, that's 0, plus 1 equals 1. That one also checks. So we have two good answers on this one. X is equal to 8 and -1.